The glow of the holographic message still lingered in the air, leaving the room in a heavy silence. The possibility of leaving Earth, of escaping the horrors that had consumed their world, hung over the group like a fragile promise. But with that hope came uncertainty, and with uncertainty, fear. Elena broke the silence first, her voice measured and calm. "We have to consider this carefully. The message mentioned a secure location, but it's a long way to San Francisco. We've barely survived here. There's no guarantee we'll make it there in one piece." Jonas leaned forward, his face lined with exhaustion and concern. "But what choice do we have? Staying here isn't sustainable. The shadows will eventually find a way in. We've been holding on, but this might be our only chance to get out." Karen, who had been tending to Marcus's wound, looked up with a mix of hope and doubt. "What if it's a trap? Or what if it's too late by the time we get there? We don't even know if the message is still relevant." "Or even real," muttered David, one of the newer members of the group, his arms crossed defensively. "We've been through hell to survive this long. Maybe the best option is to stay here, fortify, and wait it out." "Wait it out?" Ava's voice cut through the murmur of discussion. She stood, her eyes flashing with determination. "We can't wait it out. Look around us. This building won't hold forever. If there's a chance, even a small one, to get out of here, we have to take it." Marcus, still weak but resolute, added his voice. "We've all lost people. We know what's out there, but we can't give up hope. If there's even a sliver of a chance to find safety, we need to take it. We owe it to those we've lost and to ourselves." The room fell into a heavy silence as the group mulled over the words. Tension simmered in the air, each person wrestling with their own fears and desires. It was clear that this decision would not be easy, and that it could change the course of their survival. Elena sighed, rubbing her temples as she considered the options. "We need to vote," she finally said. "We'll decide together, as a group. Majority rules. But no matter what, we stick together. Those who choose to go, and those who choose to stay." The vote. The group gathered in a rough circle, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. One by one, they voiced their thoughts, each vote a reflection of their hopes, fears, and personal convictions. "I vote we go," Jonas said firmly. "We've fought too hard to give up now." "I'm with Jonas," Karen agreed. "We have to try." "I say we stay," David countered, his voice steady. "It's too dangerous out there. At least here we know what we're up against." "I'm going," Ava said without hesitation. "We've survived this long. We can make it to San Francisco." Marcus nodded. "I'm with Ava. We need to move forward, not stay trapped here." The votes continued, and as the final tally was taken, it was clear that the majority favored leaving. But the division was evident. While most were ready to take the risk, a few were reluctant to leave the relative safety of the building they had fortified and come to know. Elena looked around at the group, her expression conflicted. "It's decided then. We'll start preparing for the journey. Those who choose to stay. We'll leave you with as much as we can spare." There was no malice in her words, only a deep sorrow at the thought of leaving anyone behind. But the decision had been made, and now they had to act on it. Preparations begin. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Supplies were gathered, weapons were checked, and maps were studied. Those who had voted to leave worked tirelessly, preparing for the long and dangerous journey ahead. Ava, Marcus, and Karen led the efforts to organize the group. Each person was assigned a role, scouting, gathering supplies, and fortifying their makeshift vehicles. The journey to San Francisco would not be easy, but they were determined to make it. "We'll need to travel light," Jonas advised, studying the map spread out on the table. "Take only what's necessary. We need to be fast and ready to move at a moment's notice. David, who had decided to stay, watched the preparations with a mixture of resignation and determination. "If you change your minds, you know where to find us," he said quietly. "Just be careful out there." "We will," Elena replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You too. Keep this place secure. We're all in this together, no matter where we are." As the day of departure approached, the mood in the building grew somber. Goodbyes were said, supplies were divided, and the reality of the situation settled over them like a heavy fog. On the morning of their departure, the group gathered one last time. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the crumbling city. The vehicles were loaded, the maps were checked, and the group was ready to move. Ava stood beside Marcus, her hand in his. "We'll make it," she said softly, more to reassure herself than anyone else. "We will," Marcus agreed, squeezing her hand. "We have to." Elena took one last look at the building they had called home for the past few months. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "Let's move out." The group began their journey, leaving behind the safety of the building and venturing into the unknown. The road ahead was long and filled with danger, but they were driven by the hope that they might finally find safety. A place where they could rebuild, away from the horrors that had plagued them for so long. The road ahead. As they moved through the desolate streets, the group stayed close, their eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. The city, once vibrant and full of life, was now a wasteland, the ruins of buildings looming over them like silent sentinels. The journey was grueling. They encountered obstacles at every turn, blocked roads, dangerous terrain, and the ever-present threat of shadows. But they pressed on, their determination unwavering. Every now and then, they would pause to rest, checking their supplies and plotting the best route forward. The tension was palpable, but so was the hope that spurred them onward. As the sun began to set on their first day of travel, the group found a relatively secure building to take shelter in for the night. They set up a watch rotation, knowing that they could never let their guard down. Sitting around a small fire, they shared what little food they had, the flickering flames casting long shadows on their faces. The silence was heavy, each person lost in their thoughts. Elena finally spoke, breaking the quiet. "We've made it this far. We'll keep going, one step at a time." Ava nodded, her gaze fixed on the fire. "We have to believe that there's something better waiting for us out there." Marcus looked around at the faces of his companions, each one etched with determination and resilience. "We'll find it," he said quietly. "And when we do, we'll rebuild." The night pressed on, cold and unyielding. The survivors took turns on watch, each staring into the darkness, ears straining for any hint of the shadows that might be lurking just out of sight. Sleep was elusive for those not on watch. Every creak, every distant sound a reminder of the dangers that surrounded them. Ava found herself unable to rest, her thoughts too restless to allow sleep. She sat by the dying embers of the fire, her back against the rough wall, watching the flickering light dance across the faces of her companions. Marcus stirred beside her, sensing her unease. "Can't sleep?" he murmured, his voice low so as not to wake the others. She shook her head, her eyes never leaving the fire. "It's hard to turn my mind off. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong." Marcus shifted closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "I know, but we're doing the right thing, Ava. We can't just stay hidden and hope the world changes around us." "I know," she whispered back. "But what if we're wrong? What if we're just walking into another trap?" He sighed, his hand finding hers in the dim light. We've survived this long by making the best choices we could with what we had. This is no different. It's a risk, yes, but it's one we have to take. She looked at him then, seeing the determination in his eyes, even through his weariness. Marcus had always been the steady one, the one who kept her grounded when fear threatened to overwhelm her. She drew strength from his resolve. "You're right," she finally said, squeezing his hand. "We'll face whatever comes, together." He nodded, offering her a small smile that did little to hide the exhaustion etched in his features. "Get some rest. We'll need all the energy we can get for tomorrow." Ava nodded, though she knew sleep would still evade her. But Marcus's words had calmed the storm in her mind, if only a little. She leaned her head against his shoulder, finding comfort in his presence as they sat together in the quiet darkness. The journey continues. The next morning, the group woke before dawn, packing up their meager belongings and preparing to continue their journey. The air was thick with tension, the knowledge of what lay ahead weighing heavily on their minds. But there was also a sense of purpose, a resolve that had settled over them like a protective cloak. Elena took the lead, her eyes scanning the horizon as the first light of day broke through the clouds. "We'll stick to the plan. Head west and avoid the main roads. We can't afford to run into any more trouble." The group moved as one, keeping close together as they navigated the crumbling streets. The city around them was a graveyard of twisted metal and broken concrete, a stark reminder of the world they had lost. But they kept moving, driven by the hope of what lay ahead. As the day wore on, the landscape began to change. The tall, skeletal buildings gave way to more open terrain, abandoned highways, overgrown fields, and the occasional ruin of a suburban neighborhood. The group stayed vigilant, every rustle in the underbrush, every distant sound, a potential threat. Around midday, they came across an old gas station, its windows shattered and the roof partially collapsed. Elena signaled for the group to halt. "Let's check it out," she said, nodding toward the building. "There might be supplies we can use." Ava, Marcus, and Karen volunteered to scout the building, while the rest of the group kept watch outside. The interior was dim, the floor littered with debris, and the remnants of a life long abandoned. Shelves had been overturned, their contents either looted or scattered across the ground. "Stay sharp," Marcus warned, his eyes sweeping the room as they moved through the aisles. "We don't know who or what might be hiding in here." They moved cautiously, checking every corner, every shadowed alcove. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the scurry of some small creature hiding in the walls. In the back, they found a storeroom that had been mostly untouched. A few cans of food, some bottled water, and a couple of medical kits. Nothing much, but enough to make the stop worth it. "This will help," Karen said, her voice barely a whisper as she gathered the supplies into a pack. "We're going to need every bit we can find." Ava nodded, her attention focused on a faded map pinned to the wall. It showed the surrounding area, with markings that suggested safe zones, danger zones, and possible supply caches. She carefully removed it from the wall, folding it and placing it in her bag. "Let's get back to the others," she said. "We need to keep moving." They regrouped outside, sharing what they had found. The mood was cautiously optimistic. The supplies would help, and the map could prove invaluable in the days ahead. As they continued their journey, the landscape grew more desolate, the remnants of civilization giving way to open wilderness. The road was long and unforgiving, but the group pressed on, each step taking them closer to their destination.